The plantation owners in the capitalist context. The history of plantation owners in the capitalist context is a complex and multifaceted story that intertwines economics, politics, and social structures. This narrative explores how camp owners, primarily in the American South, operated within and contributed to the broader capitalist economy, often at the expense of enslaved individuals and marginalized communities. The rise of the plantation economy. Early settlements and agricultural beginnings. In the early 17th century, European settlers in the Americas began establishing colonies, large-scale agricultural enterprises primarily focused on cash crops like tobacco, cotton, sugar, and rice. These crops required extensive labor, leading territory owners to rely heavily on enslaved Africans. By the 18th century, the plantation system had become a cornerstone of the Southern economy, with its success deeply rooted in the exploitation of enslaved people. Tobacco and the Chesapeake Bay region. The Chesapeake Bay region was among the first areas to see the rise of plantation agriculture, particularly with tobacco cultivation. English settlers quickly realized the profitability of tobacco, leading to the establishment of large habitations. The labor-intensive nature of tobacco farming necessitated a significant labor force, initially fulfilled by indentured servants and later by enslaved Africans. The expansion to the Deep South. As tobacco exhausted the soil in the Chesapeake, planters moved southward and westward, seeking new fertile lands. This expansion facilitated the growth of rice and indigo plantations in South Carolina and Georgia, and later the proliferation of cotton plantations across the Deep South. The invention of the cotton gin in 1793 by Eli Whitney revolutionized cotton production, making it even more profitable and further entrenching slavery in the Southern economy. Capitalism and the plantation system. Economic foundations. Capitalism, characterized by private ownership and the pursuit of profit, found fertile ground in the plantation system. Plantation owners operated as quintessential capitalists, investing in land and labor to maximize output and profits. They adopted innovative agricultural techniques, implemented strict labor regimes, and engaged in global trade networks to sell their products. This integration into the global economy allowed the estate owners to amass significant wealth and influence. Investment in land and labor. Territory keepers invested heavily in land and the acquisition of enslaved people, viewing both as critical capital assets. Land was a finite resource, and its possession became a key marker of wealth and social status. The purchase of enslaved individuals represented a significant capital outlay but promised substantial returns through their forced labor. Global trade networks. The plantation economy was deeply integrated into global trade networks. Southern territories produced raw materials like cotton, tobacco, and sugar, which were exported to Europe and the northern United States. These raw materials fueled industrial production in Britain and the northern states, creating a symbiotic relationship between the agricultural South and the industrializing world. Labor exploitation and capital accumulation. The human cost. The capitalist drive for profit had dire consequences for enslaved individuals. Plantation owners viewed enslaved people as property and economic assets, rather than human beings. They enforced brutal working conditions, long hours, and severe punishments to maintain productivity. This exploitation was justified by a racist ideology that dehumanized enslaved Africans and rationalized their subjugation. Daily life of enslaved workers. Enslaved people faced grueling work schedules, often from sunrise to sunset, with little rest. They performed a variety of tasks, from planting and harvesting crops to maintaining the camp infrastructure. The physical toll of this labor was immense, and the emotional and psychological impacts were profound. Enslaved individuals were frequently subjected to violence, family separations, and the constant threat of sale. Resistance and resilience. Despite the oppressive conditions, enslaved people resisted their exploitation in numerous ways. Acts of resistance included work slowdowns, sabotage, escape attempts, and even revolts. The resilience of enslaved communities was also evident in their efforts to maintain cultural traditions, family bonds, and spiritual practices despite the harsh realities of dependency life. If you found value in this video, please give it a thumbs up, like and subscribe to support this channel. Please share across social media platforms to reach a wider audience. Political power and social hierarchy. Dominance in Southern politics. Plantation keepers wielded significant political power, both locally and nationally. They dominated Southern politics, ensuring that laws and policies favored their economic interests and maintained the institution of slavery. This political influence extended to the federal level, where plantation owners and their allies advocated for pro-slavery legislation and resisted abolitionist efforts. Influence on national policy. The economic power of plantation owners translated into considerable political clout. They secured key positions in government, from local offices to seats in Congress. Figures like John C. Calhoun and Jefferson Davis exemplified the political reach of plantation interests, championing states' rights and pro-slavery policies. Social stratification. Socially, outpost holders occupied the upper echelons of Southern society. They were often part of an elite class that upheld a rigid social hierarchy, with whiteness and land ownership as primary markers of status. This hierarchy was reinforced by a culture that celebrated the supposed virtues of the plantation lifestyle, romanticizing the antebellum South and obscuring the brutal realities of slavery. The decline of the plantation system. Impact of the Civil War. The Civil War 1861 to 1865 and the abolition of slavery marked the beginning of the end for the traditional plantation system. The war devastated the Southern economy, and the emancipation of enslaved people upended the labor system upon which plantations depended. During Reconstruction 1865 to 1877, efforts to rebuild the South and integrate formerly enslaved individuals into society faced significant resistance from former plantation owners and white supremacists. Economic and social transition. The immediate post-war period saw significant economic upheaval. The destruction wrought by the war, combined with the loss of enslaved labor, forced many plantations into bankruptcy or severe financial distress. Some plantation owners attempted to maintain their estates through sharecropping and tenant farming, systems that perpetuated economic exploitation under a veneer of freedom. Reconstruction and resistance. Reconstruction aimed to integrate formerly enslaved individuals into the political and economic fabric of the nation. However, the efforts of the radical Republicans to enforce civil rights and economic opportunities for African Americans were met with violent resistance from groups like the Ku Klux Klan and legislative efforts like the Black Codes, designed to maintain white supremacy and economic control. The legacy of plantation capitalism. Enduring economic disparities. The legacy of plantation capitalism is still evident today. Economic disparities, racial inequalities, and social hierarchies that were established during the plantation era continue to impact contemporary society. The wealth accumulated by plantation owners and their descendants contributed to systemic advantages that persist across generations. Impact on modern economic structures. Many modern economic structures and disparities can trace their roots to the plantation economy. The wealth gap between white and black Americans, for example, reflects historical patterns of exploitation and exclusion. The economic foundations laid by plantation capitalism also influence the development of industries and financial institutions that continue to shape the economy. Cultural and social legacies. Culturally, the romanticization of the antebellum South and the lost cause narrative has obscured the brutal realities of the plantation system. These narratives have perpetuated myths of benevolent slave owners and contented enslaved people, hindering efforts to confront the true history of exploitation and resistance. Personal reflections and anecdotes. Visiting historical plantations. Reflecting on this topic, I am reminded of my visit to a historic plantation in the southern United States. Walking through the beautifully preserved grounds and grandiose mansion, I was struck by the stark contrast between the opulence of the plantation owners and the harsh realities faced by the enslaved individuals who built and maintained these estates. The experience underscored the importance of confronting this painful history and recognizing the human cost of economic prosperity. Conversations with locals and historians. This visit also prompted conversations with locals and historians who shared stories of their ancestors, both enslaved and free, who lived through this era. These personal anecdotes brought a human dimension to the historical narrative, emphasizing the resilience and resistance of those who endured the horrors of the plantation system. The importance of acknowledging history. Acknowledging the true history of plantation capitalism is essential for understanding contemporary issues of racial and economic inequality. It highlights how systems of exploitation and oppression have been foundational to economic development. By confronting this history, we can better address its enduring consequences and work towards a more equitable future. The story of plantation owners in the capitalist context is a testament to the complexities of economic development and the profound impact of systemic exploitation. It reveals how the pursuit of profit drove the dehumanization and brutalization of enslaved individuals, while simultaneously building immense wealth and political power for a privileged few. By examining this history, we gain a deeper understanding of the forces that have shaped our world and the ongoing struggle for justice and equality. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, like and subscribe to our channel for more self-improvement videos. Comment below to tell us how useful you found this video. Remember to share on various social media platforms to reach a wider audience. Click the notification bell to get notified anytime we post a new video. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video.